Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's my privilege to welcome you to today's event on transitions in Pakistan-U.S. relations. President Barack Obama has made South Asia a major foreign policy priority, and he is right to have done so. The stakes for the United States and indeed for the world are simply enormous. Pakistan and India are nuclear weapon states with a long history of troubled relations. The conflict in Afghanistan has spread across that country's long and rugged border with Pakistan. And the struggle for democracy in Pakistan itself is ongoing. While there's been much progress since the tragic assassination of former Prime Minister Benazir Bhutto in 2007 and the resumption of full civilian government in 2008, democratic Pakistan still faces severe challenges, not least the threat of radical Islamic extremism. The United States has rightly, I believe, extended our support to President Zardari and his government in their efforts to combat terrorism and extremism. Pakistan-United States relations have never been more important to either country than today. Last week, while the United Nations General Assembly met, President Obama and the leaders of a dozen countries pledged their support for Pakistan in its fight against the Taliban insurgency and extremism, and they offered vital financial assistance toward this end. The United States Congress has increased aid to Pakistan by $1.5 billion per annum for the next 5 years. These funds are aimed at improving public education and health care, as well as supporting human rights. Nevertheless, if I can volunteer a personal view, the United States must stay the course in South Asia. Whatever strategy we embark on, and very critical discussions are taking place in Washington on our strategy toward Afghanistan, which obviously impinges largely on Pakistan also. Whatever strategy we embark on, we must be reliable allies to our friends, not only in the short term, but most importantly, in the long term. Too often, we've walked away when the immediate crisis had ended. We just simply cannot afford to do that anymore in South Asia. The Baker Institute is honored to have as our keynote speaker this morning the Foreign Minister of Pakistan, His Excellency Makhdoom Shah Mehmood Qureshi. I told the Foreign Minister we've been trying to get him over a year, and we're delighted that you're here with us. I would now like to turn the podium over to the Honorable Nick Lampson, who will introduce our keynote speaker. Nick will be no stranger to this audience. He served 5 terms with distinction in the United States House of Representatives, and he is one of the best-known and most respected political leaders in the Greater Houston area. We are delighted to have him with us today. Please join me in welcoming Nick to the podium.
Well, good morning, and thank you, Director Durigan. It's a pleasure to be here. Great to be able to come and stand before an audience, particularly of such distinguished people at such a distinguished location. So, honored guests and foreign dignitaries, pleased to come and introduce to you today the Foreign Minister of Pakistan, His Excellency Makhdoom Shah Mehmood Qureshi. It's often been said that Pakistan is a country rich in culture and in natural resources. In my personal travels to Pakistan last August a year ago, I also witnessed Pakistan's intellectual capital, rich intellectual capital, and the generous spirit and kind nature of its people. In my last term in office, I served as a congressional representative for District 22 here in this region of Houston, of Southeast Texas, a district with the highest concentration of Muslim Americans than any other district in the state of Texas, and one of the largest in the United States. My continued familiarity with Pakistan over the years has only increased my respect for its distinct peoples and its impressive history. Today we're here to hear from the Foreign Minister, Qureshi. The Foreign Minister is a veteran leader and public official of Pakistan. Since completing his law degree from Cambridge University in 1983, Mr. Qureshi has labored tirelessly for the citizens of Pakistan. He has held numerous posts at all levels of government and has dedicated his distinguished career to public service. He has previously served as the Minister for Planning and Development of Punjab, Finance Minister of Punjab, and Federal Minister for Parliamentary Affairs. Mr. Qureshi has also distinguished himself as a true visionary in his role as Minister of State for Parliamentary Affairs. Pakistan is in a unique stage of growth. The country is undergoing a transition from instability to a more sustainable, transparent, and institutionalized democracy. This transition to open democracy, while difficult, has led to very significant successes in the war on terror, in economic reform, in securing Pakistan's borders, in combating domestic extremists, and in reducing tensions along the line of control in Jammu and Kashmir. After September 11th of 2001, Pakistan proclaimed its commitment to fighting terror, and many international sanctions, particularly those imposed by the United States, were lifted. Pakistan's economic prospects began to increase significantly. Despite continued economic growth, low levels of spending in the social services, and high population growth, of which he says they are experts in their effort, have contributed to persistent poverty and unequal income distribution. Pakistan's extreme poverty and underdevelopment are key concerns, especially in rural areas. In addition, Pakistan's economy remains vulnerable to external and internal shocks due to internal security concerns and global financial crises. Well, I know we're all anxious to hear the Foreign Minister's assessment of Pakistan's current global and political situation, so with great pleasure, I introduce to you today the Foreign Minister of Pakistan, His Excellency Makhdoom Shah Qureshi.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Ambassador Edward Dirijan, Director, James Baker Institute. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to be here today at the James Baker Institute for Public Policy. The Institute is one of the leading think tanks in the United States and recognized globally largely due to the energizing intellectual prowess of its founder, former Secretary of State James Baker. The Institute has done seminal work. I thank Ambassador, Director, for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts on transitions in Pakistan and the US and Pakistan-US relations. Ladies and gentlemen, the proverbial Chinese curse, "May you live in interesting times," holds true for this day and age and for the circumstances we face. Whether we like it or not, whether we feel cursed or blessed, Pakistan and the US are destined to travel through this challenging period in history. And we are destined to do it together. For both our countries and the world, these are indeed interesting times. Times of great challenge and great turmoil, but also of great opportunity. Times that call for courage and sacrifice. Times that demand transformational leadership that changes destinies of nations and states and alters the course of history. Not long ago, Pakistan was confronted with a bleak future. An unpopular military dictatorship had usurped the constitution for the second time and dislodged the judiciary. Fires of terrorism and extremism were raging far and wide, threatening the very fabric of our society, our very way of life. Our currency, our reserves were in free fall. Our economy was reeling under years of mismanagement, the emerging global economic crisis, and an energy crisis of unprecedented proportions. Benazir Bhutto's return to Pakistan was for Pakistan's teeming masses the return of hope, of democracy, of values that they held dear. It was the second homecoming of the torchbearer of their aspirations. Forces of terror that wished to take Pakistan hostage knew they could not do so in her presence. They were determined to take her away. Mohtamma's assassination was one of the darkest moments of our national life. Pakistan lost its leader, its hero, its icon. Her loss was to me, in many ways, the turning point. For in her passing away, her message of hope and peace and of national and international reconciliation gathered the strength of an unstoppable storm. A storm that swept aside the forces of dictatorship and despair and returned to our people their voice and their dreams, a future. The elections of 18th February 2008 were nothing short of an electoral revolution. With the induction of a democratic government and with the election of President Asif Ali Zardari as the head of state, Pakistan's transition to a fundamental transformation is underway. While this transition continues, we have achieved measurable benchmarks. Allow me to list before you a few. Under President Zardari's visionary guidance, Pakistan's democratic culture is maturing. The Pakistan People's Party leadership has added to this culture the fundamental ingredients for durable democracy, the ingredients of tolerance and good faith, the spirit of give and take, of reconciliation and consensus building. The manifestation is a government enjoying popular support and ownership, legitimacy and credibility. The manifestations are a free media, a vibrant civil society, an independent judiciary, and a relationship between the government and opposition forces characterized by civility, mutual accommodation, and mutual respect. The struggle against terrorism has been given popular and political ownership. Today, more than ever before, Pakistan is alive and responsive to the dangers terrorism and militancy pose to security of our country and our region. Pakistan's people, its political forces, and state institutions are united in their resolve to uproot these evils. Through a comprehensive national strategy that prioritizes dialogue and development, and where needed, the use of force. The manifestation is a success with which we were able to clear, through our national effort, an area 1/3 the size of the United Kingdom of terrorists and militants. The manifestation is the manner in which the Pakistani nation looked after the effectees of the SWAT operation. Even as we've built grassroots support against terror, so too have we reached out to our neighbors, friends and partners. Pakistan is leading our region into a new era of trans-regional cooperation, be it in countering terrorism or going for transformational development projects with far-reaching dividends for the region and the world. Pakistan is building partnerships to enable it to tap into its inherent strengths and latent potential. The manifestation is the fundamentally transformed relationship between Pakistan and Afghanistan. The manifestation is the various trilateral and quadrilateral processes we have initiated with friends and partners across the region and beyond. But perhaps the greatest manifestation is the vindication and support our policy and priorities have received from you, the United States, and from our other international partners in the shape of the Friends of a Democratic Pakistan. A far-reaching program of economic reform and stabilization is underway with IMF assistance. Inflation has been halved. Fiscal deficit has fallen to 4.3% of GDP. Current account balance to 5.3%, and foreign exchange reserves have crossed the $14 billion mark. The manifestation is an economy fast recovering its buoyancy, the improvement in Pakistan's credit ratings, and the resurgence in our stocks values. Ladies and gentlemen, our transition has also been underway in the United States. The election of President Obama was a landmark event in the annals of US and world history. Like Pakistani democracy and true democracies everywhere, the American democracy has answered the clarion call of times. President Obama has emerged as the beacon of hope and optimism for people across the globe. His proposed way forward with the Muslim world on the basis of mutual trust and mutual respect has given us cause for great hope and optimism. His determination to stay the course in Afghanistan, to prioritize building Afghan state institutions and the Afghan economy is in line with our thinking. And his determination to open a new chapter of relations with Pakistan, one that is not transactional but durable and strategic and centered on the people of Pakistan and their need, is indeed welcome. Our partnership with the United States is an important pillar of our external support system. It is an important catalyst for change and stability in our part of the world. To this relationship, we wish to confer even greater durability, even deeper substance. The advent of democracy in Pakistan and of the new Democratic Party administration in the United States has created the right opportunity to give our relations a new direction, a new vigor. May I suggest the following? 1. To succeed in fending off terrorists and extremists, to win the battle for 170 million hearts and 170 million minds, the one potent tool we need, the one potent tool we have, is the tool of trade and development. The United States can make the difference between success and failure, between hope and despair. It can only make this difference if it helps Pakistan help itself. This help has to come timely. It has to come when it is most needed. The passage of the Kerry-Lugar bill is a stitch in time. However, the reconstruction opportunity zones, the bilateral investment treaty, and a free trade agreement should be expedited. 2. Pakistan, like its eastern neighbor, has legitimate energy needs. The United States can help address Pakistan's energy deficit and diversify its energy mix. We should be offered a civilian nuclear deal at par with India. We must also be enabled to develop our vast hydropower and coal generation potential, as well as renewable and greener sources of energy. 3. Pakistan's capacity building needs, particularly of its law enforcement agencies, need to be addressed on a war footing. 4. Our strategic dialogue with the United States must encompass disarmament and non-proliferation issues. Pakistan is a willing partner in the global initiative. We wish to move forward on the basis of equal and undiminished security for all, with a non-selective and non-discriminatory approach. Five, We have to develop even closer understanding on strategic issues of common interest. Afghanistan's peace, stability and security is in our mutual interest. So too is the need to stabilize and sanitize our common border. The drone attacks impinge upon our sovereignty and territorial integrity. Pakistan must be given the technology to conduct such operations on its own. Ladies and gentlemen, I've shared some of my thoughts on the colors and contours of a revamped Pakistan-US relationship. In this age of interdependence, in this era of transitions, this relationship between the world's sole superpower and one of the world's largest and most strategic Muslim democracies must be taken seriously and allowed to realize the highest potential. I thank you.
His Excellency the Minister has agreed to take some questions, which I have many questions, and I'll try to categorize them as well.
To stay here?
I will just ask the question, and then you'll come up to the podium, and then we'll. There are several questions on Pakistani-Indian relations. My God, you're very prolific.
Do you want to be? Do you think I'm going to be punished early in the morning?
Well, that's why I gave you that second cup of coffee. But there are many questions on Pakistani-Indian relations, and you mentioned this in your remarks, Mr. Minister. But can you elaborate on what steps Pakistan is planning for the resumption of more beneficial relationships with Pakistan and India?
Ladies and gentlemen, this government that I represent, we feel very strongly that we need to normalize relations with India. So when we came into office, the first foreign minister that I invited to Islamabad was the Indian foreign minister, Mr. Makhdoom Mukherjee. We had an excellent interaction in Islamabad. I was invited to Delhi twice, and I went to Delhi twice. We had good meetings. We designed a way forward for ourselves, and the movement towards normalization and interaction and confidence building was going at the right speed. But Mumbai upset the process. And ever since Mumbai, our composite dialogue is suspended. I was personally very hurt when I saw the Mumbai attack, because I was in Delhi when it took place, and I was there to build bridges. I was there with a message of peace and friendship. So it undermined my message. Nonetheless, I'm an optimist, and I will not give up, and I will continue to build bridges. You will be happy to learn that on the 27th of September, I had a meeting in New York on the sidelines of the UN session with my counterpart, the new Indian Foreign Minister, Mr. Krishna. I'm happy to share with you our interaction was very positive and very constructive. And I tried to sell the idea why a resumption, why a connection and re-engagement and resumption of dialogue between Pakistan and India is critical and important for South Asia, peace and stability in South Asia. I have given him, I've made certain proposals for the way forward. We are ready to engage. We are not just ready to engage, we are also ready to take the perpetrators of the Mumbai attacks to justice. The legal process is on. The 7 people that we've arrested, the trial has started. 2 of them are people that the Indians accused as principal actors of this hideous crime Mr. Lakhvi and Mr. Zarar Shah. They're both under trial. Hopefully, we feel that the legal process, we intend to complete it between 3 to 5 months. And I hope there's progress there, and I hope there is a resumption, because it suits both of us. We both stand to gain through peace and stability.
I think you're looking at some of my questions without my giving, because one of the questions on the trial of the Mumbai bombers and what the timeline is for bringing them to justice. There was another question, several questions on the drones and your assessment. I think the point you made during your remarks, you would like to have the capability yourselves to be able to conduct drone operations or not. So those are two questions that you've already answered. U.S.-NATO plans in Afghanistan have been under review, as you well know, Mr. Minister, in Washington. And with the backdrop of General McChrystal's assessment, Karzai's election in Afghanistan, what are Pakistan's views on these matters, which will obviously have long-term effects on the region and the world?
When we came into office, the relations between Pakistan and Afghanistan, to put it mildly, were not ideal. But we realized that we had a vested or an enlightened self-interest in improving relations with Afghanistan, because peace and stability in Afghanistan has a direct impact on Pakistan. We have to stop the blame game, we have to stop the finger pointing, and we have to build a new relationship. And this government, ever since this elected democratic government has come into office, we have started building bridges. And in the last year and a half, I'm happy to report and I'm happy to share with you that our relations have improved dramatically. There is greater confidence and trust between the political leaderships. We have signed a new declaration agreement which lays the architecture for a future bilateral relationship, which is not just cooperation against terrorism and extremism, but goes beyond. Talks of economic relations, talks of improving bilateral trade, talks of enhancing regional connectivity through upgrading our road and rail links. So we have in place a much better framework, and I think we will build on that. In the elections that have taken place in Afghanistan, we took a very conscious decision to stay neutral and respect the decision of the people of Afghanistan. We took no sides, we had no favorites, and I think because of that policy of ours, today we are in a much better position to engage with them and also help initiate a process of reconciliation within Afghanistan.
Do you believe that it is realistic and feasible to differentiate between the members and groups of the Taliban and enter into a dialogue with the so-called more moderate forces in the Taliban?
Here again, when we came into office, we looked at the policy that was being pursued by the last regime, and we came to the conclusion that we have to sit and rethink our policy. And we rethought, and we now have in place a policy called the 3D policy, which is dialogue, development, and deterrence. And we want to use the right mix of the three. We want to dialogue, but only with those who are willing to give up arms and violence, who are willing to accept the writ of the government and the constitution of Pakistan. We are more proactive in concentrating on the development of the tribal belt, the FATA region, which was ignored for many years, and that neglect has led to high levels of poverty in that area, and that poverty provides people, the extremists, the gun fodder that they require. lack of economic opportunities, lack of a physical infrastructure over there. We are trying to build that. And we are trying to wean the moderates away from the hardcore element, because we feel that amongst the extremists, the militants, there is an element which is reconcilable and an element which is irreconcilable. Now, the element Al-Qaeda associates, they are, and the Taliban, many of them are irreconcilable. We will not negotiate with them, and we will eliminate them, and if required, we will use force to eliminate them. But there is an element in the tribal belt, in Fatah, in Balochistan, and the frontier bordering provinces of Afghanistan, who are just caught in the crossfire. They do not agree with them, but they do not know what to do. They just want peace, they want security, they want development, and they feel insecure. They feel that they are not protected enough. If they stand up, they will get the protection. So we are giving them the confidence to stand up, and the SWAT operation is a case in point, where we went in with a design strategy. We've cleared the areas. We have mobilized public opinion for that operation. Today, people are supportive of that operation. And within 10 weeks of the operation, over 2 million people who were displaced from Swat, Malakand, and the adjoining areas are back home, felt secure enough to go back home and start their lives and livelihoods all over again. Why? Because they're feeling confident. Because we've told them that we are with you. We will stand with you. The political, democratic government is going to stand with you. We will rebuild. We will reconstruct the destroyed infrastructure. The militants have destroyed your schools. We will rebuild them. They have destroyed, many of other, civic communities. We will rebuild them. We will rebuild institutions. We will give you a modern, well-trained police force. Until we've done it, we will ensure that the army stays in that area, so that the militants do not come back seeing a vacuum. They do not come back into the area. And the result is that today, Lashkars and the local population is working side by side with Pakistani troops in helping identifying the militants and flushing them out. So I think the new strategy is working, and hopefully we are trying to fine-tune it and improve upon it. We are also learning, because frankly we had no prior experience of fighting that terrain. Our concentration in the past, in the last 6 decades, was on the eastern side, which was a different theater, and the western side is a completely different geography, completely different theater. But we are learning, and in the last year and a half, because the public opinion in Pakistan has changed decisively against militancy and extremism, I think we are becoming more and more effective.
Well, Your Excellency, you've touched on a couple of questions here, basically on the Eastern Front and the Western Front. And in the United States, we often read assessments that Pakistan's basic policy toward the Taliban, Al-Qaeda, and Afghanistan will always be inhibited, because the major threat is seen to be India and the possibility of yet another war with India. So therefore, the military and security resources of Pakistan are more dedicated to that than they ever will be to the West. And how do you answer that or respond to that?
See, that's a very good question, because people when they pose this question, they have a history. Right. In mind, they have a background in mind. And obviously, India comes under discussion, because for the last 6 decades we have issues with India. We still have outstanding issues with India, which we need to resolve. But we agreed, and we feel that we can resolve them through peaceful negotiations. Today, there is a new balance in South Asia. Today, I think there is a greater constituency for peace on both sides. I think there's a greater realization in India and Pakistan that war is no longer an option. it will be mutually destructive and suicidal. So what differences we have can be resolved and should be resolved through peaceful dialogue. Today, there's a greater realization that there is a new, very serious threat that has emerged, and that is extremism and terrorism. Many people were not aware of this threat. Initially, the feeling was that, what are we doing? This is not our war. This is not our fight. Let the NATO forces do their job in Afghanistan. Why are we getting sucked into this? But today, when they see suicide bombings, and we had one this morning where 5 innocent lives were lost, 5 innocent lives, and 4 of them were of Pakistani nationals. Today, when people see their innocent people dying, when they see all the major urban centers of Pakistan being hit, when they see that the economy of Pakistan has suffered, and job creation and investments have been compromised because of these extremists, I think the public opinion has changed. When they see girls' schools being bombed, when they see people trying to impose their way of life on us, which is different, their interpretation of Islam is quite different from ours, then I think civil society has woken up. Today, the government has built a new partnership with civil society, and we have successfully built a consensus against extremism and militancy inside Parliament and outside Parliament. There is almost a consensus in Pakistan that our immediate priority is to take the terrorists on and to fight this. This was never realized as a challenge. It was never realized as a threat. Today, there's a greater awareness and recognition of this threat and challenge.
News today, I think if you read I believe it was in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal today, but this must be the origin of this question. Recently, the world learned that aid from the United States was used for purposes other than it was intended. As a U.S. taxpayer, I would like to know what steps you would take so that there is a proper accountability and transparency. I believe this is referring to aid to some generals unsourced in Pakistan who said that the military did not get the money that was allocated to get it. It was spent for other things.
What we have done and what we've said to this administration is that we realize that the American taxpayer has contributed to our economic assistance through the Kerry-Lugar bill. We are grateful, we are thankful, and we are appreciative of that. We also realize that there have been concerns on the proper utilization of your money. We are willing to partner with you, and we are willing to sit with you to devise mechanisms which are transparent and which are to mutual satisfaction. There are some concerns that you have that need to be addressed. And today we have a concept called the Multi-Donor Trust Fund that will be jointly overseen. Today we've agreed to increase the oversight of the of audit and monitoring and evaluation of that money, which has never been there before. And today there's a greater realization in Pakistan that under difficult financial conditions that the world and the US in particular has come to our help, and every dollar must be spent properly and accounted for. There's a greater realization, and not just a greater realization, we've put into the whole system, hopefully better planned and designed mechanisms to ensure transparency and proper utilization.
If you could describe the subcontinent, Pakistan, India, Afghanistan, in the next 5 years, what would your vision be? What would you like to see?
What I would like to see is peace and stability and the dividends of peace. Because I feel if we can get peace and stability, we will get growth. Because I think Asia is a continent, which has the energy, the resources, and can lead the world out of the global recession that we are facing. Now, in order to take advantage of these new opportunities, we have to be at peace within South Asia and in the region. If that happens, we can then concentrate and reprioritize our sort of distribution of our resources. We can concentrate on areas that have been neglected in the past, areas like health and education and sanitation and drinking water, the condition of our cities. We can promote investments, and we can create investment opportunities and create jobs. We have the potential of not just producing enough for ourselves. I can see, and my vision for Pakistan is a country which is producing and throwing up an agricultural surplus, producing enough milk and meat and vegetables and fruit for the Gulf, which has the purchasing power. Go beyond Afghanistan into Central Asia and address their food requirements. We have the potential, we have the land, we have the wherewithal, we have the technology and the potential to do so. My vision is increased trade within the region. We have today an organization called SARC, South Asia Association for Regional Cooperation. But the vision of SARC is yet not materialized. The vision was integration, greater people-to-people contact, improvement in sort of regional trade. We haven't done that. My vision would be to see greater sort of regional trade. If ASEAN can do it, if the European Union can do it, so can we. So we have to learn from success stories around us and implement them in our area to improve the quality of life, the purchasing power of our people. And with this, when literacy goes up, when purchasing power goes up, when quality of life goes up, that will add and strengthen democracy and democratic institutions. My vision is to see a strong, democratic, progressive Pakistan in the next 5 years.
Thank you very much, Mr. Minister. Thank you.